What's good people, and welcome back to the channel here on Crewboy Productions. My name is BK, and this is the Silly, Nerdy, and Wordy podcast, episode number 80. Glad to be at episode 80. Thank you for all of you who've been listening since episode 0 and watching as I move forward towards episode 100. What is going on, everyone? Hope everyone is doing very well. Glad to be back doing another episode as I will be reviewing the new film Eden. This will be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen it, this is your warning. So go check it out and come back, and let's get right into it. So this movie, Eden, first of all, it premiered initially at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 7th, 2024. Then it got a wide release on August 22nd, 2025, for the rest of us to be able to see it. So this Eden film is directed by Ron Howard, and Ron Howard's previous projects include Solo, a Star Wars story. And if you remember at the time, this film released back in 2018, there was some drama going on with Lucasfilm and Star Wars. Ron Howard was not the original director. It was Lord and Miller, the directing tandem, but there were some creative differences, issues with the two of them, Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, and all of the people involved there. And then Ron Howard stepped in to finish directing the film. At the time, 70 to 80% of the film was done, but Ron Howard had to step in and continue that, reshoot some scenes, and finish off the film, which is what he did. Ron Howard has also directed The Da Vinci Code, that was released back in 2006. He also directed A Beautiful Mind. He also directed, many of you've seen this, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the 2000 release. He did that. He also directed Apollo 13, that was released in 1995. And a fun fact, many of you, maybe you don't know, but Ron Howard was initially an actor, and one of the best TV shows, one of the greatest sitcoms that of all time possibly he was on, was Happy Days. And he played the character of Richie Cunningham. The show ran from 1974 to 1984. It was a total of 170 episodes that Ron Howard appeared in. So we all know that Happy Days song. A lot of us probably saw those reruns on Nick at Night back in the day. So nice fun fact there. Now, the cast of this Eden movie includes Jude Law, Vanessa Kirby, Ana de Armas, Daniel Brühl, and Nicholas Denton, among others. And stay tuned later on. I'll have some nerdy notes, particularly about these three leads, Vanessa Kirby, Jude Law, and Ana de Armas, later on. So stay tuned for that. So let's get into this movie. Now, the setup to this movie, there's very small similarities of how Superman started and how this movie started. Similar in the sense of using the text on the screen. The setting of this movie takes place in the early 1900s after World War I. So I like how it set the scene, as well as the movie was going on. We saw the text on screen in terms of the seasons changing from fall, winter, summer, etc. And this is also based on a true story. And this was about a Dr. Ritter, which is played by Jude Law. He went over to the Galapagos Island after World War I to get away from the craziness that was happening in the world at that time, to write a book. His thing was, I'm going to go and just live off this land, off this island, along with his wife, his partner, which was played by Vanessa Kirby, and to write this book to hopefully improve humanity. And as time went on, information about his writing, about his works got out, and people started to find out via letters. And And so that's when you see Sydney Sweeney. She's also in this movie. I should have mentioned her earlier. Her character, as well as Daniel Brühl's character, they come to the island and they were inspired by Jude Law's character and what he's doing. And so they left everything behind to go and live on this island and for their own personal reasons. So that's what brought them to the island. And then later on in the film, 30 to 45 minutes in, comes the Baroness, which is played by Ana de Armas' character. Her, along with her entourage, her bodyguards, her engineer, and other people involved, comes with all these things. And so they eventually come to the island, but they come for different intentions. She wants to build an exclusive resort. So all of this is the setup. And again, this is in the early 1900s that this film is taking place. And so that's what is going on. In terms of the performances, and I'll also say overall, I enjoyed this movie. I like this movie. I think it was a solid movie. Now, in terms of performances, the standout for me was Ana de Armas's character. Once she came in, as I said, 30 to 45 minutes in, what she did with the writing that was provided to her and her execution and the story arc of her, I just gravitated to what she was doing with it. Although it was, you can say she was the bad girl with the manipulation and everything, but her performance of what was given to her, I thoroughly enjoyed what she was doing with her character. So I'll say that. And then in terms of the rest of the cast, I thought was pretty solid. And I'm not going in any particular order here. I will say towards about halfway through and then again towards the end, Sydney Sweeney, she had some good moments in this as well. One of the moments is when ultimately the Baroness character, she dies, and Hines, which is played by Daniel Brühl, he was not the one that killed the character. It was actually the Dr. Ritter's character, but he was there when it happened and he came back to their hut, and him and Sydney Sweeney's character, they have this moment, and you see this moment of strength, moment of intensity, and the execution in terms of the writing that was given to Sydney Sweeney's character in terms of the intensity, saying, hey, they try to force us off of this island. We're not going any here. We're here to stay. We've built everything that we have here. Because initially when they came to the island, they didn't know what they were doing. It seemed like they were going to survive. They were struggling very early on. And initially Dr. Ritter and Vanessa Kirby's character, they put them somewhere thinking that they would be leaving the island within a few days, and that didn't happen. And Daniel Brühl's character, he felt sad. He was very upset about what happened. And Sydney Sweeney's character saw that, and then she figured out that he did not kill the Baroness after determining that in that scene. So that was just a good moment. And then the birthing scene, a lot of coordination was happening here. She was by herself, first of all, so her husband wasn't there to help her. And nobody was there except for the Baroness's entourage. This is earlier in the movie. And they went over to steal food from their hut because at that time they ran out of their food. She was having contractions. She was in pain. The baby was coming. And then the dogs came towards her and she's screaming. She's yelling. She's trying to fend them off with a broom. And then meanwhile, the entourage for the Baroness is stealing the food in another room. Sydney Sweeney's character is screaming and yelling, fending off. The dogs are barking. The music is swelling. And all of that is happening. And they're cutting back and forth between Sydney Sweeney's character as well as the two guys that are stealing the food. I just want to give props to obviously the director, the editor, the sound and mixing team, maybe the colorist as well. All of the coordination of that happening simultaneously, as well as the actress, Sydney Sweeney, doing all of that, putting and cutting that together was really nice to see. It was very well done in that scene. It was an intense scene, and just wanted to point that out. I really enjoy what was going on there with all of the coordination and ultimately how it was all edited and all the different departments coming together to get that scene done. So very, very nicely done. And then also I want to say, in terms of all of the three groups I'm talking about, with Vanessa Kirby's character, Jude Law's character, that group, and then you have Sydney Sweeney and Daniel Brühl and the child in that character, and then eventually the baby. You had that group, and then you had the Baroness, which is played by Ana de Armas, and that group. They all had different intentions. And once you watch this film and you see the character development from all of their stories, you see from where they started to where they finished, I think it was very well done in terms of the character development. I like where all of their stories ended up. I think it made total sense for that to happen. So props to the writing department. And then obviously, this is a spoiler review. Two of the characters ultimately died, those two being Jude Law's character, Dr. Ritter, and the Baroness character played by Ana de Armas. And then Vanessa Kirby's character, she ends up leaving the island. And then the ultimately Sydney Sweeney's character and Daniel Brühl's character and the two kids, they're the ones that end up staying on the island, which was an unexpected thing. I didn't think that was going to happen because in the beginning, they didn't know what they were doing. They were struggling so hard, and it just seemed like they were going to be leaving sooner rather than later, but that is not the case. At the end of the film, we see some text, we see some actual footage of the actual island and the actual people, and we see that the character that Sydney Sweeney played, she lived out her days on that island until the year 2000, I believe. And then her descendants are still there living on the island with a hotel resort for tourists. That was pretty cool to see. Let me know in the comments if you knew that this was a true story about this film. So let me know what you thought about it, as well as what you thought about the film if you had a chance to check it out. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have a few nerdy notes that I want to get to, some production information in regards to this film and some of the people in this film. Starting with three of the leads in this film, and I'm talking about Vanessa Kirby and Jude Law and Ana de Armas. Now, if you have noticed, these three actors have been in a lot of films and shows this year, 2024 and 2025, and also particularly this summer. Starting off with Vanessa Kirby. Now, she, in addition to being in this movie, this Eden movie, she is also in Fantastic Four First Steps, which premiered in July 2025. And so, taking into effect that she was filming the Eden movie in 2023 and early 2024, and then also filming the Fantastic Four First Steps movie in 2024. And then we move on to Jude Law, which I believe he was the more busier person out of the three. He was in Star Wars Skeleton Crew, which debuted in December 2024. So he was filming that in 2023 and possibly early 2024. And again, these are my thoughts and in terms of my research and what I think about how this is going. But he was filming that, and then he's in this Eden movie that is filming in 23 and 24. And then also Jude Law is going to be in a limited series on Netflix called Black Rabbit, which will be debuting in September 2025 on Netflix. So you have to imagine he was filming that in 2024. So the filming schedule for him going back and forth and between all these things and time in between, very busy year. Even though you see them in all these things now when they're releasing back to back, it's very busy for them to do that. And then we get to Ana de Armas. In addition to being in this Eden movie, she is also in the ballerina John Wick spinoff movie that released in June 2025. from what I was able to find, filming principal photography took place early in 2022, continued in 2023, and then finished with some action sequences and reshoots in 2024 for that June 2025 release. Of course, she had a different skill set to use in that action movie with the weapons training, with the hand-to-hand combat training, doing all of that before she even got to set to do those scenes after getting the training, and then going into this Eden movie, which is a different total skill set. So all of that is to say that, yes, we see these actors in these films releasing back-to-back months, but that means that they were extremely busy in the year or years prior to these movies coming out. So that's just something that I wanted to point out that I just noticed when I rewatched the trailer prior to seeing the movie. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is two of the props in this movie, and talking also about the props master. And I want to talk about the old record player and the typewriter. Starting off with the record player. So you see the movie, you saw the old wind up record player that you have to wind it up, and then the needle hits the record and it plays. And once the wind up is done, you have to rewind it to keep playing it. So that's not something that we have today, currently in 2025. If we do, it's very rare. So enter the props master for this film, or property master. What they have to do is go and find this item, purchase it, or if not, they have to commission it to be built, meaning talking to the director and the studio and the financial personnel to get this built so that they can have this on set so that the actor can interact with it, and having to do all that, or they may designate somebody to get that. And then another thing I wanted to talk about is the typewriter. You see Jude Law's character constantly typing as he's writing his book. And that is an old item. It's not as old as the record player, but it's still pretty old. You still can find that. And having to put the paper in and take it out, it must have been difficult to do. But also you see towards the end of the film, halfway through the film, you see Jude Law shooting the typewriter with a shotgun multiple times. So to me, this is what I believe happened. So the prop master has access to all these things, these props that the actors have to use. So what I believe has happened is you have specific typewriters for this movie. It was dedicated to have these will be the 3 or 4 typewriters are designated for Jude Law to specifically type his book while he's doing those typing scenes. And then you have a whole nother set of typewriters, and they're going to say, we're going to designate these to be shot at multiple times, because that is what happened. And so designating whatever the number you want to put at, let's just say we're going to designate these 7 typewriters, and these are the ones that Jude Law is going to shoot in that film, or his stunt double. And so having that is just something that is done, and it reminded me of the Thor movies and Avengers movies with the hammer, the first hammer, the Mjolnir, where Chris Hemsworth had to have multiple, because I saw a production featurette of it, and you had to have multiple hammers, different types of hammers for different reasons. A lighter hammer for combat during those combat scenes, a heavier one to try to lift, to show who is mighty. And then also the heavier one is for more of the detailed in it as well. And so switching back and forth, having those different props for different purposes. And I say that to relay it back to the typewriter as well as the record player. And another thing I wanted to mention about the record player is, yes, they may have got the physical one on play, but maybe you can use it and turn it, but the sound doesn't come out of it. And so they also have to bring in the sound and the mixing department to dub the audio for the old 1900s record player, which may not be working. It may not have the sound come out of it. So having the sound department dub the sound so that can come out, so that we can see that and hear that in the movie. And then lastly, let's talk about what a props master is. And as I mentioned before, I told you, but a props master is basically the head of the props department. They're in charge of every physical object an actor touches on screen. That means they're the ones tracking down, renting, or buying exact items the script calls for. And if something doesn't exist or it's too fragile or unsafe, then they'll have replicas built for filming. And so that's what part of what happened for this. And the props master in this Eden film, his name is Emil Oliver. And he has previously worked on The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was released in 2005. He also worked on The Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, 2010. And in both of those films, he was the buyer and the dresser. So he was the one buying the props at that time. He also worked on Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. That was released in 2017. He worked in the props department there. And speaking of Thor, he worked on Thor Ragnarok. He was the assistant props master. That film was released in 2017. And finally, he worked on the 2018 Aquaman film. He was the assistant props master for that film as well. Okay, that is all the nerdy notes I have for you today, as well as the spoiler review for this Eden film. Let me know your thoughts. Have you seen this film? Will you go see this film? And hopefully I was able to provide you with some value and hopefully you learned something. If so, hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just search for the Silly, Nerdy, and Wordy podcast and you can find it there. And thank you to the new people that are here. And then also I have the blog number 3 out for the Silly, Nerdy, and Wordy.blogspot.com. And the third blog is about the origin of this podcast and how I started it, and as well as the blog. So with that, I want to let you know the next video coming up here soon is going to be about a similar film to Eden, similar in the sense that it did not have the big notoriety. It also debuted at a film festival. I'm talking about the Tornado film, which was episode number 67. You can check that video out here on the screen. And I want to send you all good vibes for the rest of your day. And until next time, we will talk soon.